welcome to another episode of Run with Julia. This is a new video where I will be talking with people about their running stories, and it's an inspirational conversation. It's a longer conversation than the ones you've seen me having on the run, and today we're meeting Ed Rios. His story is truly remarkable, and thank you, Ed, for sharing with us the story of triumph over adversity. Hello, Ed. I am with Ed Rios.
Hello, how are you?
Very well. This is so good. So good to see you. I have to say that Ed and I have, well, we haven't actually met in real life, but we did a podcast. To find his podcast, which we did originally, it is on Conversations with a Bodhisattva, and I'll put the link below. And we did that at the end of last year, and it's incredible and really worth a listen. But now we are doing part 2, and we're doing it on video. And Ed has an amazing story, which he's going to tell us. He's always been a sporty person. He was more into tennis and football, but he is somebody who got into running by a park run and started at 26 minutes and has improved to such an impressive sub 20. He did that, I think, did you do that off once a week training, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, in between the park runs, I never trained. So literally my legs wouldn't allow it in those days because, I hadn't done the proper stretching or anything like that. So literally I could only run once a week. And 5K in those days, 5K was completely maximum for me. I wouldn't have been able to go any further.
Well, he improved, obviously showing his incredible running ability, because to be able to run 19 minutes off no training is, well, just park run training is awesome. You then went on and ran the Q10K and realized you could run further. But then in 2020, you started to run more. Was that because of lockdown?
Yeah, I think like quite a lot of people, lockdown meant that we had to kind of fill our times with other activities and being able to go out into the parks. I've got a park near me called Trent Park, which people who live in North London, it's quite a famous park, beautiful. And it meant that, I spent a lot of time there, and I thought, well, why not get fitter at the same time? I was trying to get my daughters running as well. One daughter in particular would run with me a lot in those days. So it was a natural thing to do, and it meant that I was running, like you said, more often during the week compared to what I was before.
But this is where Ed's story is incredible. It is a real story of two things. One, the huge part running played, but also triumph over adversity, because Ed was on holiday in Lyme Regis in 2020, and he got hit by a car and was told he'd never run again. So Ed, please tell us that story, which is, huge, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's been life-changing, actually, in many ways. Not actually for the worse. So that's what makes it kind of like more interesting, and maybe to some people a bit incredible. But you would think having your leg broken in 3 places, your back broken in 2 places, my T4 and T11 sections of my back were broken, and both scapula in my shoulders, both of them were broken. You'd think that would be like one of the worst things that could ever happen to you, and at the time it probably was. It felt like that for sure. I was on holiday. It was I don't know if you remember when Boris let us out for a couple of weeks. We went to St Ives first of all in Cornwall, and then we were on our way back. We stopped at Lyme Regis, and it was the final day of the holiday. I was out running. Like we said, I'd been out running a bit more in lockdown, so I was getting used to running every day. And it was my final run before going home, so I was probably thinking about work, or maybe not the nicest of things, returning to work and all the stuff I had to do, and my mind was a bit clouded. And in just a normal road, it was quite early in the morning, I stepped out in between 2 cars, the kind of thing you should never do. And whack, got smashed to bits by this car. I don't think he was speeding. I think, to be fair to him, it was probably 30 miles an hour road, and he was doing 30 miles an hour. But when you get hit by a car at that speed, close quarters, it feels like a lot quicker. The car itself, the impact threw me in the air. I had multiple hits by the car, actually, because it hit me on the leg, first of all, threw me in the air as he was braking. It then I hit the windscreen, and that smashed a bit. So lots of glass actually went into my back, which I remember all the scars that were in my back. I've still got 2 prominent scars actually from those wounds. One sec. Yeah, and it's in general, I think the accident itself, I can't remember loads about it, but I remember rolling over the side of the car after hitting the windscreen, landing near the curb, and just for a moment kind of passing out, I believe, and then just coming to and trying to get up. And when I tried to get up, that didn't go down too well. I fell down straight away. And then I really knew I was in trouble. So at that point, the driver came over to me. He was sobbing. He was in, tears. He couldn't really do a lot because he was, for him, it was as bad as for me. He was in bits. He was probably thinking, what is this going to do to my life? And is this guy going to survive? And then a very kind lady, came out of her house. He must have seen it. And she put me in the right position, and she put a white dressing gown underneath me. And I waited for the ambulance, and I got taken to Southampton, a hospital, which is a long trip from Lyme Regis, but it was where the best fracture clinic was. And I was in there for approximately 3 to 4 weeks. It's hard to get the operation because every time a new patient would come in, my operation would be put back because they're having to deal with that new patient. So it took almost 2.5 weeks before I could get operated on.
And in those weeks, so you're in an ambulance going to Southampton. I take it your family have been told, and are they racing to there too?
Yeah, so they couldn't actually go into the hospital, because it was COVID, that we were on complete lockdown, and so the hospital wouldn't allow them in. I did talk to my wife while I was lying on the road.
Gosh.
And it was kind of one of those things where obviously she was very upset, but there's not a lot she could do. We just we had WhatsApp calls and various things when I was in hospital, so I could let her know how I was going.
So you were alone in the Southampton hospital for 4 weeks, and you were told that your injuries would mean that you never ran again.
Yeah, not the doctor who operated on me actually, but a doctor came up to see me, and I asked him about running because, as I said, I was getting into it, and that doctor quite bluntly, when I look back, said, "Forget about it. You won't walk properly again. Probably you'll be limping." And I remember thinking at the time, my world had sort of caved in on me, and I was so depressed for that day. It happened in the morning. They were doing the morning rounds. And then overnight, something must have happened in my head, because I woke up the next morning very defiant and saying, well, no way, mate. That's not going to happen. And in fact, I felt I needed a challenge, a goal at that point. So I said, right, I'm going to run a marathon. And so I spent the next couple of weeks in hospital planning out that marathon, and which one to do. It kept me occupied, actually, to be honest. And it was quite therapeutic.
Did you have other patients that were you in a ward? Did you have people you could talk to, or were you just planning it all alone, or what was?
No, it's a ward of 12, all men, and most of them motorcycle accidents, actually. So and some were in a really bad way. I mean, there was one guy who wasn't motorcycle accident, but he had his leg cut open by sheet metal in a factory, and he was a young guy, but he was so determined to walk again that that kind of inspired me as well. His determination rubbed off. So me and him would talk a lot. I was kind of telling him some of my plans, and he'd ask me about it, and it would be quite nice to have that person.
You'd never run a marathon. You'd not run further than a 10K race, and you're told you'd never walk well again. You'd certainly never run, and you decided to train for a marathon. And is Defiance something that has served you before in life?
Defiance, yeah. I mean, I feel like throughout my life, I've had situations where I've had to kind of prove myself, and situations where things haven't necessarily gone right. I had problems, in my early 40s. My parents died, and I had, that led to like slightly drinking too much, and the odd occasion, quite frankly, embarrassing myself in front of people that I care about and love. So I've had to overcome those kind of challenges, and that's in recent times.
And did
So
running help with that challenge? Did with
yes,
your parents
yeah,
died? Yeah.
yeah, most definitely. I think without it, I would have really, really struggled, because it kind of replaced alcohol, actually. As a kind of almost a drug for me. And that's kind of when I was doing the park runs. And without it, I would have had to find something else, because alcohol was kind of consuming me at that point. And it wasn't like I was an alcoholic, but I was in my periods of down moments, I was just drinking heavily, and it was making things worse, as you can imagine. So here's the thing: actually, drinking and running don't mix. So I had to kind of like make a choice, and I think I made the right choice. And even now, I've never gone back to anywhere near that kind of level of drinking. I often have non-alcoholic beer now, but I do still drink when I go up to see my friends in Sheffield, and what have you. I haven't totally given up or anything. I don't think that would be good for me either. But it's definitely something that's reduced a lot, and running has kind of taken over. Running won.
Running won, and also you won. So
Yeah.
you respond to adversity and difficulty with, right, I'm going to go for it. And has that been there? Did you think that was there when you were a boy as well, or has it developed as an adult?
Yeah, I mean, as a boy, I did a lot of athletics, and I was a very good sprinter. And there's one race in particular where I'd got to the kind of the Yorkshire finals, and it it was going well. I got to the final. I'd run my heat, and I was running against another athlete who was good. He was from Leeds, and the winner would then go and run for the nationals. And I got off to a flyer, and then he came from nowhere and caught me on the line. And this guy actually ran with a limp. So it was in those days where you could see a trail leg, and so you could see the mark down the lane. And my coach and my dad were saying, look, if you get a good start, he won't be able to catch you. But my God, he definitely did. I mean, came from nowhere. And I think that kind of broke me, actually, from that period of time as a runner. It kind of finished me. And I remember seeing my dad and my coach at the side. They almost looked like they were laughing, and I took it the wrong way, as you can imagine. And I said to myself, well, that kind of phase of my life was over. I wasn't going to sprint again. But I ran 10.98, so I was on the cusp of running really quick times. I was only 15. I do regret it, but then, like in life, I think you learn to live with your regrets and realize that things happen for a reason. And had I gone on with athletics, then other things may not have happened. I've got 3 beautiful daughters, lovely wife, and nice house in North London. All these things I may have taken a different path. So
Also sounds like it's just a maturing, because a 15-year-old boy, when there's adversity and difficulty and the sensitivity in you, it's not surprising you might go, I'm not doing this anymore. Whereas as you've matured as a man, you've turned that into, right, I'll show you, which is and that just comes through maturity and things, doesn't it? As you overcame the grief through running rather than alcohol. And then now we've got you in the Southampton hospital bed, your main friend who you're talking with, and both of you inspiring each other. You're planning a marathon, and you're told you're not even walk well. So what happened next? You come out. So this is August 2020.
Yes, but probably by the time I got out, it's way into September, to be honest. So I planned that I needed to be walking by Christmas, so we could do the Christmas walk as a family. So I set myself milestones. Also had physio, but in the early days, all I could do was stretch, just get my leg kind of straighter again. And I think people who've had ACL injuries and that kind of thing know exactly where I'm coming from. You need to basically make the leg stronger and be able to stretch it and get it straight again, because it's been in a hospital bed for quite a while, not used, and your leg muscles just shrink. And they're very ineffective until you start using them again. So I managed it. I managed to walk in December, which was great. And then I realized then that I was on course for the marathon. So then I had physio, and then I decided, through my much kind of dismay, but my physio said I had to go to Pilates. So once I could get off crutches, I went to Pilates, and I was the only guy in the room, as you can imagine. And I got picked on a lot by the teacher. I felt terrible because I was finding it really hard to do everything. But probably one of the single most important things as a runner, I think, you can do is something like that, actually. So it's part of my regular routine now. So I can go to classes or I can do it myself. But every morning I do Pilates routines, either myself or in a class.
And had you picked an actual marathon? So we're now into the beginning of 2021. Had you picked a date and a marathon?
Yeah, so I picked Milton Keynes Marathon, which is 2022 May. It was one that I thought was going to be flat. It was local. It was one that would be easy to get to, and one that actually my wife wanted to do as well. So we're going to do it together. I kind of thought then, like, it would be a good stepping stone to see whether I actually got hooked on marathons or long distance running. And at that point, actually, I thought I'd need extra help. So I joined a running club called Trent Park, obviously located in Trent Park. Before that, I'd never really wanted to join running clubs. They weren't my kind of thing. In fact, I used to enjoy kind of beating people in the park runs from running clubs, because they'd be there with all their shirts on and stuff like that. And I thought, right, they're my target. Often couldn't beat a lot of them, I have to say, but the ones I did, I was happy about. And then I became one of them, and I learned so much from them. And those people who joined these running clubs, that the people I'm talking about, they can learn so much because there's so much experience there, and normally very nice, knowledgeable, and it's a good social thing as well. Yeah.
What's the main things you learned from joining a band of runners?
So I think I'd say the main in terms of marathons, because I was trying to pick their brains a lot on marathon running, is don't go out too fast. That was number one thing that they drilled into my head, because I'm a bit headstrong, so it's the kind of thing I would do. Practice everything you're going to do on the day in an actual training run. So do that. So take the gels, make sure your stomach reacts well to them. Do all the kind of things that on the day that you're going to need to do, and kind of decide what works for you and what doesn't. And then just basic things like make sure you're not rushing. Give yourself plenty of time. Make sure that you hydrate the day before, the week before even. That's very important, because people just think, oh, I must carb load the day before, but it's about the week before, really. It's hydrating and sleeping well. So there's lots I've learned. Someone said something slightly that stuck in my mind: never trust the farts. I don't know if you've ever heard that one, but that stuck with me, to be fair. I
think as runners, we've all kind of been reduced to base level on occasions.
Yeah. And so that is definitely in my mind when I run, and particularly after Milton Keynes, I got hooked, basically.
I'm intrigued though, Ed. We haven't heard how you started running with pins in your body. Did it hurt? How did you build that up? Because it's famous.
It hurt like mad, to be honest. Yeah, it could be excruciating actually. And it was not just the pain, but it was also the the way I ran looked so awkward. I had to retrain my legs all over again to run. But it's perseverance. People would see me down the local park and they'd say, keep going, the people I know and dog walkers and whatever, you're doing great. And they could see I was in a bit of pain. Um, but little by little, the pain went. And what came instead was a new level of confidence that I could get through this and I was going to do it. And I kind of knew I'd had an ACL injury in the past before, and I'd been through a similar thing, not quite as serious, and I knew that I could do it, and that kind of helped me in many ways that I'd been through something similar.
And as you said, you've learned to come through difficult stuff, and
Yeah.
I think it is not that you necessarily want to keep having difficult things, but you do get a resilience and an ability. So how much mileage were you doing until also, Ed, you were 49 at the time, because you've turned
Yeah.
50 since, haven't you? How much mileage did you build up to do for Milton Keynes in the May, and
Yeah.
what happened? How did it all go?
Yeah, so I was probably doing low mileage compared to most people that train for a marathon because I was conscious of my leg. Um, I I was using a training plan that actually was about running less often, but running harder. So 3 key runs a week. So one would be your interval speed work, one would be a kind of tempo session, and one would be a long run at the weekend. I wasn't doing. Lots of people run 5, 6 times a week. I was sticking to the 3 times a week. So I was doing lowish mileage, and people that I talked to at the club, I remember saying, "You've got to do more. You've got to do more." And I was like, "No, I've got my plan. I'm sticking to it. This is how I want to run it." And it worked. I mean, it came through for me, that plan, because it meant that I didn't overdo it in terms of the running, but did enough. So I was probably doing, I don't know, maybe maximum 30, 40 miles a week. Yeah. Um, but it was enough for me to get through the marathon. Yeah.
And not to hurt your leg
Yeah,
that you're repairing. And
exactly.
then what was marathon? Because we haven't mentioned your times, because we've also, from Milton Keynes, Ed went on to do Boston, which he's just done this
Yeah.
April. He's a 50-year-old. You were 50 in January, and you've just done an incredible Boston, which, and it is awesome given all the story, but it's awesome for anyone. But what happened in Milton Keynes? You ran a great time, and
Yeah, Milton Keynes, 3 hours 12. So it's my first marathon. I was absolutely delighted. I had in my mind 3:30, around about 3:30, because I thought, knowing the person I am, I'd kind of like kill myself to do it. But 3:12, I just was so overjoyed, and it meant that I could then go on to do, for my age group, do Boston.
yeah.
Which was always in my mind as well. If I decided I quite liked it, I was wanting to do some of the majors, and Boston's the hardest one to do because you can't really get into it without a good time. So I thought, let's get that one out of the way. I've qualified for it.
Also, it's quite an interesting one to choose, because it has all that downhill stuff, which is
Yeah.
quite a thing given you've been repairing a leg. So yeah, tell us. So you went. So it was 11 months on, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's happened?
So it's April this year, April the 17th. It's a bank holiday in Boston. It's their Patriots Day, so it's a big celebration throughout the whole city. I stayed in New York with some friends, so I was running around Central Park the week before, which was lovely, and then went over to Boston a couple of days before. My wife and my sister and my niece were there as well, so they were supporting me. It was I never had any idea of the scale of it until I got there. I went to the expo to get all my numbers and race pack, and it was like bedlam. It was madness, the amount of people. And then I kind of sunk into me that, oh my goodness, because everyone looks like a real athlete. You are basically in with the cream. of marathon runners there, because most of them have got good times for their age groups. There's one or two charity runners, but majority are in there on time. And so yeah, so I've made all the mistakes again, that you shouldn't do. I had seafood pasta the night before. I'll never do that again. Anyone listening to this, do not touch seafood the night before. I had stomachache in the morning. I had to go to the toilet. I'll make this quick. Several times, which meant I missed my wave. So you have to get a bus from the centre of Boston all the way out to Hopkinton, which is way out. So it's a point-to-point marathon. So you run it from inland to the coast. So once I got to the athletes' village, where you have to wait for about 2 hours. I was freezing cold. The weather had turned and it had gone from 30 degrees, like I had in New York, to 5, maybe not even that. And it was raining and windy and cold. We had a headwind. So everything was kind of changed for me, and I wasn't in the best of shape. I had a shin problem going into it as well, and I was just thinking, look, somehow I'm going to get through this. But missing my wave meant that when the race itself started, I was doing a lot of zigzagging in and out of people, which was incredibly frustrating for me, as you can imagine. And it meant by the end of the race, actually, I'd run an extra kilometre.
Wow.
Yeah, which I couldn't believe, really. But yeah, I can now, looking back, I can imagine it. Yeah.
So that's an extra 4 or 5 minutes of.
Yeah. And but I was delighted because I had a target in mind. I wanted to qualify for London, and the London time was 3:15 for my age group, but they say get within 10, you need to be 10 minutes quicker than that to guarantee it. So I needed 3 hours 5, and I was behind schedule because of the late start, but bit by bit I was creeping up, and my mates were using an app to track my progress, and I could hear these pinging going on where they were messaging saying, oh, Ed's blown it, oh, he's never going to do it. And I just looked at it and thought, right. And it helped me speed up, and that actually helped me, because I just thought, right, sod them, I'm going to flipping do this. And I pushed on, and I actually finished really strong. I was finishing with a pace of like 4:08 something kilometers, so you need 4:15, 4:16 basically to get 3 minutes. And so I was finishing way quicker than that, but I was having to catch up the pace. So I finished 3 hours 4. So it was just inside.
Such an awesome run, Ed.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to me listening to your spirit and the way you do go, sod it, I'm going to do this. When when the gauntlet's thrown down, you go for it. And it does interest me that at 15, it's almost like at 15 it crushed you, and then something in you's risen up. And every time people are saying something to you and challenging you, you rise up. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, what I should probably mention is a month before the Boston Marathon, I was given the bad news about I got cancer. So they've been monitoring my platelet level, and it came out that I had something called thrombocythemia, which is hard to pronounce, but it's a type of blood cancer. So in many ways,
a month before
Boston. So it was March. Sorry, month before Milton Keynes. So I'd known about it for a while, but yeah, so I'd lived with that knowledge for quite a while. So every time I do a running race or a marathon like that, I've got this extra thing where I'm thinking I'm not only doing it for myself, I'm doing it for my fight. And it's so important to not give in to things like this, So it's like you were saying earlier about overcoming challenges. It was just another one to me.
And are you overcoming the cancer?
Yeah. I mean, I've been lucky, because if in terms of cancer, it's like probably one of if you can get a good cancer, it's the Carlsberg of cancers, right? So the trick is to keep fit.
Really?
and to eat healthily and not to, do stupid things like smoking.
Yeah. Well,
So actually running helps with that.
yeah.
So for me, I've overcome it. It's like an unwanted neighbor, right? It's there all the time, but if I don't give it any credence, if I don't actually like worry about it, then I'm actually defeating it. You know,
Well,
because positive attitude and being really healthy means your immune system, is good, and it pushes back. I've got a battle going on in my body at the moment where blood cells are fighting it out against cancer, and as long as I keep myself fit and I keep a positive mindset, I win the battle. I only need to take an aspirin a day. Again, I've been lucky. There's no chemo or anything like that. It's one of those cancers that unless you're really lucky and it turns into leukemia, then you have to have those kind of treatments. But so far, so good as far as
yeah,
I'm concerned.
you're winning. You are a
Yeah.
winner. You are a winner. It's huge. All of the things you're sharing. I mean, it's incredibly inspiring for people who are going to be watching this. Have you found that you are inspiring others? Have you been told this by people?
Yeah, I mean, I've done the odd, Facebook post, spoken to quite a few of my mates about it, and my family, and I feel like they're always surprised that I don't talk about it, that much, or that when I do, I'm almost taking the mickey out of it. I'm just, not giving it any respect, and I feel like that's the way to deal with it. I don't get me wrong. I know people are in a lot of pain with cancer, and I know the treatments they're going through are terrible. And I know I've got, if I'm not lucky, but I've got a form of cancer where it's not affecting me at the moment. But that said, I think even those that aren't as lucky, that have to maintain this positive like vibe and feeling in order to get through it, right? Every day's a battle, but you just fight and fight and fight and fight, and that's all you can do. And if it gets the better of you, you've done what you can, right? And in my case, I feel like I'm beating it at the moment, and
You're living. You're fully living, and
yeah.
also experiencing and running. And at the moment, we are now a month, or I'm not running the Loch Ness Marathon. You
Yeah, I
are
am.
of
Yeah.
the Loch Ness Marathon, aren't you? And what
Yeah.
made you choose that?
I've been told it's one of the most beautiful marathons in the world. I wanted to do, so my plan is to run all the majors,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to do another major this year after Boston, because it's quite intense. So I wanted to do a more low key one, but one that just made me think, yeah, I want to do one that's beautiful. And everyone told me it's not an easy one.
Yeah, I know. I've heard.
Yeah, so I'm not expecting a mega time or anything, but I'm expecting a lovely run, and I'm expecting an experience that I'll never forget. And I've got friends in Inverness, so I'm going to stay with them. So it's Loch Ness to Inverness. So I'll finish in Inverness, and they'll be there, to cheer me on. So it's
And then it's London in April.
yes. So I weirdly the London Marathon Association, they've not allowed us to apply yet. I mean, you could get in the ballot, but those who want to do good for age, we're still waiting to be able to apply. So I'm not 100% in yet, but I've been told that if you like I said, with my time, it should be a formality.
I think so. So, Ed, you are an inspiration. You are a winner. What would you say? I mean, you've shared a lot of advice, but what would you say to somebody who is either wanting to do their first marathon or is in a difficult place? And I say you've said a lot, but it's good to hear from somebody who is, as you said, winning over adversity. How would you say they approach any challenge or goal they want?
Yeah, I would say that first and foremost, it's running a marathon is an experience you'll never forget. It's something that will challenge you to the limits, both mentally and physically. And so it's something that that will stay with you for the rest of your life, whether you do any more or not. and it's such an amazing achievement, and the elation at the end. Okay, you're tired. Some people might even want to throw up, whatever. But the feeling is unrivaled when you cross that line. You just feel like incredible. So think of the end goal. Don't think of the long, like 26 or so miles. Think of what it's going to feel like at the end. Because once you do get to the end, trust me, if you're like me, you'll want to do more because of that feeling, that elation. If you don't want to do it ever again, then you'll have those amazing memories of something you've got through. And you'll meet people en route doing the marathon that you'll chat to, and they'll stay with you in your mind. I know I did. I spoke to quite a few people during and after the Boston Marathon. Same with Milton Keynes. A lot of them are on my Strava now, so we connected. Heartbreak Hill in Boston is definitely a bonding hill when you're running next to someone and they're saying keep going and you're saying you keep going as well. Come on, let's do it. It's called Heartbreak Hill for a reason, and it was very difficult. But the people I met en route were amazing.
Thank you. This running community is huge. I've obviously seen it grow over the last 40 years, and it's been awesome to see the bonding, the camaraderie, the love that's between people. And thank you, Ed. This has been an amazing conversation. And Ed and I haven't met in real life. We've got the podcast, which I'm going to put below in the description. We're meeting today. We have a plan to meet at a park run with our mutual friend Julie. But Ed has spotted me on the King's Road.
Yes, several times actually. But I can't actually say anything to you because you whiz past. Yeah, you keep telling me you're on your way to the gym, but I reckon you're on your way for a nice cappuccino or latte. Yeah, actually.
Yeah. He knows me well. That's probably definitely what I'm on my way to. Well, thank you. It's been
no worries. It's been a pleasure talking to you again.
Thank you again, Ed. I so enjoyed our conversation, and I'm looking forward to talking with more of you. I have 2 wonderful guests lined up, and if you've liked this video, please press the thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed already, please do. And thank you, as always, for running with Julie.